On today's show, we're going to look at the latest news over the last couple weeks and talk about whether we would move these guys in our rankings. And then also, Evan is going to talk about, at the end, some things that he learned that he didn't think he'd learn from doing the team previews. First thing we got to talk about is this Kendre Miller situation. I mean, Kendre Miller only played in 8 games as a rookie due to some nagging injuries. Shows up the first day of camp, gets hurt again. Dennis Allen went out of his way to make this comment. Like, he wasn't asked directly. Dennis Allen went out of his way to say about Kendre Miller, that's a player who needs to figure out how to stay healthy because you can't make the team in the training room. Now, I don't know what you think, Evan. I don't think cutting a 3rd round pick because he's been nicked up is really good process or something the Saints will do. But he's clearly in the doghouse. I don't feel good about Kendre Miller right now. Evan, would you even consider having Kendre Miller, I guess, in your top 150 at this point? And what do you think about Saints backfield right now?
I really want to like him because from watching him in college at TCU, he was a really fun player to watch. He's got a lot of talent, and he's got a pretty wide open opportunity. I mean, Alvin Kamara, which, by the way, this gives Alvin Kamara some leverage in his own contract negotiations. The fact that Kendre Miller is still in the tub. I really want to like Kendre Miller, but I think that he's really on the fringe of the top 150 at this point. And I keep coming back. We talked about it with Brandon Thorne. I think that Jamal Williams is going to end up playing potentially quite a bit because of the pass protection issues. I mean, this offensive line is all of a sudden a bottom 5 unit, and Jamal Williams can pass protect. And I don't know if Kendre Miller can. I don't know if the Saints even know if Kendre Miller can. That's how much he has been on the shelf.
Yeah.
And that quote, "You can't make the team in the training room," that strongly suggests that Kendre Miller's roster spot may not even be secure. Dennis Allen worded that a specific way. It's really disappointing. One of the reasons that Kendre Miller went a little bit later than his talent would have suggested coming out of college in the draft was because he has a little bit of a bad rap as a guy who doesn't always take care of himself. So I think it goes beyond just being a little bit nicked up. There's a history of him not taking care of himself.
Yeah.
And that's how you incur things like hamstring injuries.
Sure. And getting a reputation for not taking your job seriously, a la Kadarius Toney and stuff. We saw the Giants give up on Kadarius Toney relatively quickly, based on, I think, some more off-field stuff than on-field. But anyways, the Kamara thing that Evan mentioned, I think, is interesting. Alvin Kamara wants a new contract, but he's not doing a holdout. He reported to camp. He's 29 years old, but said he feels great, said he has no plans to skip games. And Jamal Williams is there too. So we did make some moves here in this backfield in our rankings. We were already light on Kendre Miller versus market, but now even more so. We're down to 176 overall on Kendre Miller in the ETR half PPR top 300. I was personally already taking Ty Chandler, Zach Charbonnet, Marshawn Lloyd, like all those running backs over him. I actually like Khalil Herbert over Kendre Miller at this point now also. And so, yeah, I feel pretty good about that. On the Kamara stuff, though, we're up to 69 overall on Kamara in half PPR, obviously even higher in full PPR. I don't think people realize Alvin Kamara last year caught 75 balls in 13 games, 5.7 catches per game. It's just such a great fit with Derek Carr, who wants to check down constantly, offensive line problems, get the ball out to Kamara. I could see him catching 75 balls again, Evan, and I don't like to be bullish on 29-year-old running backs, but the way Kamara wins is more sustainable, I think, just catching a bunch of dump-offs from Derek Carr. So, yeah, where are you at on Alvin Kamara now that we know this Kendre situation, plus Kamara is not going to hold out?
And they're light pass catchers, to begin with. I mean, they've got Chris Olave and then a lot of question marks throughout their pass catcher core. Juwan Johnson is on the shelf. Rashid Shaheed is really interesting. I mean, he's got big play capability, but he's never been a full-time starting wide receiver. So I think they're going to need Alvin Kamara. I mean, I would strongly consider moving up Alvin Kamara on your draft target list because he's practicing. He reported. Underhill and Mike Triplett just did a podcast about Alvin Kamara's situation, and they think that he is just critical to the Saints' chances of winning the division, maybe being a playoff team. And the team, like they're going to end up needing to lean on him, and he's going to end up with a ton of touches again.
Yeah, for sure, better play in PPR, but yeah, certainly warming a little bit to Kamara, who I haven't taken a lot of yet. Okay, Second story we need to get to is this J.K. Dobbins stuff. So, somewhat to my surprise, I mean, J.K. Dobbins is always talking about how he's 100%. Don't worry, I'm healthy. And when you see him on the field, he's not. So, I was a little surprised that J.K. Dobbins was active for the first day of camp. This was 10 months since his Achilles tear. Okay, now I couldn't believe Evan's take. I'm going to give you the floor, actually, Evan, before I give my take on J.K. Dobbins, because I couldn't believe Evan's take on J.K. Dobbins. So go ahead, Evan, on the Dobbins situation.
Well, there is a lot of opportunity in the Chargers' backfield because this team is going to run the ball a lot under Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, and they're going to run the ball successfully. Greg Roman has always had successful rushing attacks. You got Gus Edwards. I mean, I think that he's on the back nine.
Yeah, and
he's
we should know
has ever played in the passing game. Go ahead.
And we should know Gus Edwards was revealed by Jim Harbaugh that he's recovering from an offseason surgery too, and he'll be eased in at camp.
Kamani Vidal is a really interesting prospect, but he's a 6th-round pick. J.K. Dobbins, like I've always had a pretty hard and fast rule against running backs with this kind of an injury history, especially with the Achilles, because that is just running backs do not successfully come back from Achilles injuries. But this situation is just wide open, I think, with the Chargers. And so J.K. Dobbins at a very, very cheap cost, I think is a compelling late round fantasy pick.
Yeah.
And he, I'm going to end up with him ahead of his ADP for sure.
How would you rank it right now, Gus Edwards versus J.K. Dobbins?
I think that Gus is the favorite to lead the team in carries. But if J.K. Dobbins can get back to 85% of what he was previously, I think that he's the most talented running back on the team. And people don't want to draft him.
Yeah.
But I think that he's a bench stash and a guy with some upside in best ball.
Yeah. So I have 0 J.K. Dobbins, and I totally get what Evan is saying. I'll see. But for now, I'm not that compelled based on him reporting to camp and running through bag drills to start taking him. We're still pretty low on Dobbins in the ETR ranks. We're at 200 overall. We do have Gus Edwards at 105 overall. If we keep seeing good stuff from J.K. Dobbins, we will certainly move him up. But to me, it's not just the Achilles. Like in 2021, that knee injury that J.K. Dobbins had was not a clean tear. ACL, LCL, meniscus, and hamstring. He needed multiple surgeries after that. Comes back in 2022, misses a ton of time, does play a bunch down the stretch, but it looked like he was dragging his leg.
And he was also averaging like 5 yards per carry.
Exactly. Yeah. He was dragging his leg, averaging 5 yards a carry. And then last year, first game of the season, he blows out his Achilles. And I'm no doctor, but I have to think that's related, right? Like your leg is already all jacked up, and then you go out one game, you blow out your Achilles. So, and there was no interest from the NFL in J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins ended up with a 1-year, $1.6 million contract with $50K guaranteed. I mean, we guarantee the people who work for us more than $50K. They gave J.K. Dobbins $50K guaranteed. So I don't know, man. I've been staying away. The Kamani Vidal thing, I mentioned in an article I put up today. And they talked about this on Establish the Edge AFC West projections show. Much rather have Vidal in redraft than best ball because he could be a 0 or he could be a big hit. I can't take a 0 in best ball. If it's a 0 in redraft, I'll just drop him and move on. You can't do that in best ball. So certainly prefer Vidal in redraft. Third story we have to get your take on, Evan, is the Javonte Williams stuff. Javonte Williams shows up first day of camp, took all the first team reps in every drill, and Sean Payton was raving about how he lost a bunch of weight to get back to his college weight, which led to him being the 35th overall pick at North Carolina in this draft. There has been a lot of speculation, no reporting, a lot of speculation from various Broncos media people that Javonte may not make the team, etc. I never really bought that. I do buy that maybe this Sean Payton regime doesn't really like Javonte Williams that much. I do buy that, but I think Javonte Williams is going to be on the team. Evan, I don't think the people have heard your take on the Broncos running back situation.
Yeah, I've kind of gone back and forth on him. I mean, I think that you had to move him up a little bit when Audric Estime got injured. And, there is strong speculation that Samaje Perine is not going to be on the team.
Yes.
And Jaleel McLaughlin, he had a pretty nice season last year, but he is a specific kind of player who's never going to handle large workloads. Javonte Williams is built to handle large workloads. You can't forget last year he was very inefficient. Okay, but you can't forget that he was coming off a major knee injury, um, and all signs have been positive so far early in training camp. The beat writers have been talking up. Sean Payton has talked him up. So I think that I was negative on him after the draft, but at this point, I think that he deserves to be moved up rankings.
Well, look, and he's not expensive. Nobody wants to take Javonte Williams right now. We have him down at 107 overall, the RB 35. It's not like we have some huge projection or huge ranking on Javonte Williams, but at that ranking, you're probably still going to get him because no one wants him. I mean, absolutely no one. And I kind of get it, right? Like we're talking about, I don't know what you think, Evan. I think that 3 running backs are going to touch the ball in every Broncos game this year. In other words, Estime is going to get some early down looks, I think. Javonte, the main back, and then McLaughlin and like a Darren Sproles type role. So you're talking about 3 running backs getting a touch in every game for a team with a pretty tough schedule and implied to score the second fewest points per game in the league. So I get why people don't want to touch Javonte Williams or really any of these guys with any type of value pick. I get it totally. So yeah.
I do think that as a unit, the Broncos are going to be successful running the ball this season. And they got a rookie quarterback. Sean Payton has always had efficient running games, and they've got a powerful offensive line that can move people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at the end of the day, if you just look at the running game as a whole, I think that they're going to be productive. And I still think that Javonte Williams is the pretty heavy favorite for touches.
Yeah. And throw rate from Sean Payton to the running backs is absolutely massive, like league high. And so you're going to get some of that for sure from all these backs. Maybe not Estime, but definitely from Javonte and McLaughlin. All right. Story number 4, Daniel Jones was coming off of the ACL. He gets cleared for contact, immediately practicing in 11 on 11. I think for redraft purposes, Daniel Jones probably isn't in the mix unless you're in a 2 QB league. But I do know Evan thinks that Drew Lock has a chance to make some starts this year. I also want to note that Daniel Jones has one of those contracts that Derek Carr had with the Raiders, Russ Wilson had with the Broncos, where the team can get out after this year from Daniel Jones' contract, but they can't get out if he's injured. So there's incentive to bench down the stretch, which is what we saw with Russ Wilson, which is what we saw with Derek Carr down the stretch the last couple of years. So, Evan, any thoughts on Daniel Jones getting cleared off the ACL?
I think that was largely expected. I mean, I didn't think that anybody was expecting Daniel Jones to miss a large chunk of training camp or anything like that. So it's not really a needle moving thing. I'm worried that the Giants are going to be really bad, and they're not going to be incentivized anymore to continue to play Daniel Jones. And that's why I think that Drew Lock, we're going to see him make starts this season. So yeah, I don't really see any. I mean, Daniel Jones is like a QB3.
Yeah.
Not someone I would be targeting really in any scenario.
I think the bigger question is how this affects Malik Neighbors, because we want to be high on Malik Neighbors, right? These rookie wide receivers who go in the top 10 and have the kind of profile that Malik Neighbors have, the history of them hitting is really high. Now, Neighbors goes somewhat high in best ball. I think he'll be way more affordable in home leagues because people are going to be like, I'm not taking a rookie wide receiver for Daniel Jones's Giants. I could see Malik Neighbors slipping into the 4th or 5th round in home leagues. And at that point, I think it's a buy for me there. But yeah, Evan, I'm curious what you think about Neighbors.
I'm going to be higher than ADP on Malik Neighbors. I think that Brian Daboll is going to build the offense around Malik Neighbors. He's by far their most talented offensive skill position player, and I don't think that Daniel Jones or Drew Lock is bad enough to not be able to get him the rock. They're going to scheme the ball to him. Think Stephon Diggs when he arrived in Buffalo with Brian Daboll there. We're doing the Roto World Dynasty rookie draft right now. I just took Malik Neighbors at number 2 overall, and I'm really excited about it.
For sure. For redraft, we have Neighbors up at 28th overall, the wide receiver 19, a little bit behind Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith, but ahead of DK Metcalf and DJ Moore. And I feel pretty good about where we have Malik Neighbors right now. All right. Story number 5, the Rashee Rice stuff. I'm just tracking this closely because I think it's important. So they asked Andy Reid on the first day of camp, have you heard anything about Rashee Rice's suspension? What are you expecting there? And Andy Reid says, no word yet. We don't know. We haven't heard anything. Now, we know the NFL can still use the commissioner's exempt list. We also know that the criminal charges for Rashee Rice haven't been heard yet. We do have examples like Ezekiel Elliott of some midseason suspensions. To me, that's way worse. If I take Rashee Rice, I want him suspended week 1 through 4. I can live with that. And then just have a team that starts going nuts because I got Rashee Rice late down the stretch. But if he gets suspended the middle of the season when there's bye weeks, when there's injuries, or the end of the season, God forbid, when it's the playoffs, that I have a problem with. So I know you're not a legal guy, Evan. Neither am I. We don't know exactly what's going to happen here. I don't think anyone does, not even the Chiefs. But how would you be handling Rashee Rice right now in rankings?
Yeah, that's like he's the toughest guy to rank right now. I mean, this is a problem if you're a ranker. I don't know what to do. I think I have him around like maybe 85, 90 range tentatively right now. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I'm very much in wait and see mode.
I mean, to be clear, a reason that we have him up at 59 overall in our top 300 for half PPR is because we are trying to, we're layering in back-weighted production. And so if you assume that the suspension is early in the season, the games Rashee Rice plays down the stretch are more valuable significantly than the games that he plays early in the season. So we're up at 59 overall. I've been taking him in best ball. I just think if something happens where he doesn't get suspended somehow, or it's early in the season, or it's only 2 games, I mean, it's a printing press. I mean, Rashee would have gone in the second round if not for all this stuff. I mean, for sure.
Yeah, it's a big edge if you have him and he like doesn't get suspended. Or something. It's a huge edge.
Yeah.
So I understand trying to be aggressive and get ahead of that.
For sure. Okay, let's stay in Kansas City for story number 6. I mean, I seem to feel like it's all the time with these undrafted free agent Chiefs running backs. This time is Deneric Prince making headlines on fantasy Twitter because Deneric Prince, not CEH, has been the second running back through drills behind Isaiah Pacheco. Now, Deneric Prince was an undrafted free agent out of Tulsa last year, only appeared in 2 games, got 0 offensive touches. I know he has a decent athletic profile. I'm curious what you think of this, Evan, because I do think the backup spot to Pacheco is an important one to think through.
It is. Deneric Prince has like a very limited resume. He played at Texas A&M, transferred to Tulsa, never had more than 126 carries in a college season, was in college for 4 years, had 17 career receptions. But the Chiefs are one of these teams that relies heavily on athletic scores, especially when it comes to undrafted free agents. Like if you have a good athletic profile, the Chiefs are going to be interested in you, and you don't get drafted, the Chiefs are going to take a shot on you, and that's what Deneric Prince has. 6 foot 216, 4'4", 140, sub 7 second 3-cone time. I mean, he checks box. He's like a spark guy.
Yep.
You know, so I think that he's interesting. You know, and this is definitely a situation to track. Clyde Edwards-Helaire just is not it. I mean, we know that at this point. I can't even imagine. Somebody was saying, "Oh, I'm overweight on CEH." Like, why? You know, like why? Like, you know that he's not going to do anything for you.
I think just to answer that, the games that Pacheco missed last year, CEH was like, we had him projected as like a top 12 running back, and I think he finished as such. So you would need completely cleared out and CEH have the only role. But I don't think that the issue with this Deneric Prince stuff is now we don't know if the Chiefs even want CEH to be that guy if Pacheco is out.
And I know you've been asking the question, Jerick McKinnon. Do we have any intel on what's going on with him?
Yeah, so McKinnon is unsigned. From what we understand, he continues to work out. I have no idea if he's going to sign with someone or not. We have built in someone listed to the projection on the Chiefs running back, though, just in case they sign someone. And I should mention that about the Chargers, too. Like, I think Miles Sanders could come available. I think Dameon Pierce maybe could come available. And so we're trying to be conservative with some of those unlisted carries, giving them to a guy that we don't know is on the team yet. But for now, if McKinnon doesn't come back, the big thing for me is Pacheco. If McKinnon doesn't come back and Pacheco hangs on to some of that 2-minute third down work, I mean, Pacheco's role is just super, super strong. Because again, they don't like CEH. Deneric Prince, I get that he's athletic. There's a reason he was an undrafted free agent and got 0 touches last year. So yeah, I'm still just big on Pacheco for now. And I hope that they don't end up bringing back McKinnon. Let's go to number 7. Oh, another legal thing. Jordan Addison gets arrested. So Addison, I talked about this on Market Monday. The only update that we have here is first day of camp, Jordan Addison shows up. It sounds like he expects to be suspended. He said, any disciplinary action that comes my way, I'm just going to stand tall, face it, get through it, and shake back. I feel like anything that comes my way is meant to happen or deserved. So we're projecting roughly 4 games suspension for Jordan Addison. We're down to 99th overall on him in that like Rashid Shaheed Curtis Samuel range. Before the Jordan Addison news about the DUI, we were up in the 70s, and I actually was reasonably optimistic on him. I'm curious, Evan, I know, we don't want to project a suspension, but I'm curious what you thought of Addison independent of the suspension this year. There's a lot of questions about quarterback play, et cetera.
Yeah, questions about quarterback play. And this is not his first incident either.
Correct.
Jordan Addison, a year ago, in July 2023, was cited for driving 140 miles per hour on a Minnesota freeway.
To save his dog, allegedly.
Yeah. So this is starting to become a little bit of a pattern. And I think that the NFL, when they see that pattern, like, he's going to be suspended at some point.
Yeah.
I think that that's coming, and that's coming this season. We don't know when it's going to be. You talk about, maybe Rashee Rice gets suspended early and then comes back late, and he's a factor in the fantasy playoffs. Like Jordan Addison, like, pretty good chance, I would think, that he might not be around for the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, it's so hard to know when this will be. What do you think about how this would affect Justin Jefferson? I mean, I don't know if you guys realize, if they don't have TJ Hawkinson, which we're not expecting them to have until midseason, and they don't have Jordan Addison, we're talking about total dust around Justin Jefferson. And normally, yeah, that's great. He'll get more targets. How many more targets can Justin Jefferson get anyways? You know what I mean? And defenses, I know they mentioned it on the ETE pods, but like, if your choice is to guard Brandon Powell or triple team Justin Jefferson, I know what's coming. I try not to overthink this stuff with great players, but I would be lying if I said it didn't give me some pause on taking Justin Jefferson there in the top 5 or so. Where are you at on Justin Jefferson?
I think he's like around number 7 overall for me.
Yeah.
I do think that Sam Darnold is good enough to get him the rock, and that Kevin O'Connell can scheme him the football. So I'm not really like that target. His target, projection is going to be extremely high.
Yeah.
Either way, really. I mean, they're if you remove Jordan Addison from the equation, they become really, really thin at pass catcher. I have Justin Jefferson behind Jamar Chase right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think wide receiver 4, maybe.
Yeah.
And I feel pretty comfortable with that. I still feel very comfortable with him in the middle of the first round.
Yeah, we have him 6th overall, but if I was in a home league and I thought that some of these wide receiver values would slip later than they do in best ball, I would consider taking Breece Hall over Justin Jefferson, and I might consider taking Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I'm obviously taking Bijan over Justin Jefferson also. So, yeah, I think we're kind of on the same page there. Brandon Aiyuk news. I'm kind of tired of talking about this already, but Brandon Aiyuk reports to camp. He isn't really participating. He says he has like neck soreness, which is obviously code for he wants a new contract. We never really moved on any of this Brandon Aiyuk news. We had him 23rd overall. We stuck with that this whole time. We have Debo 22nd overall in half PPR. Evan, what do you think about Brandon Aiyuk as a ranking now that we know he's at least in camp, even if he's not playing?
I haven't moved him at all because it just makes zero sense for the 49ers to even entertain any kind of a trade with their best wide receiver. I mean, this is a Super Bowl team. He's not going anywhere. I think that they end up figuring it out, and that's kind of what I'm hanging my hat on. And I think that his arrow is still pointing up as a producer. I mean, I think that his production can rise from where it was last season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's hard for any of the 49ers to get more efficient, but if something happens to Kittle or Debo or CMC and you get more volume for one of these guys, including Aiyuk, then it's just an absolute smash. Story number 9, staying in the NFC West here. So this was kind of a thin, fluffy story, but I wanted to mention it because I think it's important. Kyler Murray said he couldn't shake and bake like normal last season in his first year off the ACL. Remember, he came back around mid-season, if I recall correctly, and wasn't as big a threat as a runner he's been in the past. Now, another year removed from the ACL, you also get rid of Cliff Kingsbury. You add Marvin Harrison. You get year 2 Trey McBride. I mean, you get an atrocious defense, ton of dome warm games. I kind of think Kyler gets back to some semblance of the big-time rushing stuff. I mean, unlikely he ever gets back to 2020 where he had 133 carries, 819 rushing yards, 11 rushing touchdowns. But man, I just find myself wanting to take so much Kyler, and I love Trey McBride so much. And so I take Trey McBride there around pick 50, and then I back it up with Kyler. It's one of my favorite stacks to make right now, period. I'm curious if you put anything in this, Evan, about Kyler's rushing, another remove from the ACL, and what do you think about Kyler this year?
I love Kyler too. I mean, I think that this is going to, and I think that you said it in our private Slack that you think that the Cardinals are going to be a shootout team,
Yeah.
and I could not agree more. I think that they're going to be good schematically. I think defensively, but their talent just isn't good. I mean, their best cornerback is Sean Murphy Bunting. Yeah, that's an issue. I think that their pass rush is going to be a big issue. They don't really have any threatening pass rushers. And I'm a big believer in Drew Petzing, their offensive coordinator. I think that he's going to be a head coach in the NFL sooner rather than later. And he's got weapons. Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson showed some flashes as a rookie. I'm totally in on Kyler with you.
Yeah, we have Kyler 90.
I think that we're going to be playing a lot of Kyler in DFS this year.
Oh, I'm just playing Kyler everywhere, every format. Yeah, I mean, Kyler, we have 94th right now, but that tier is so flat. Like Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott. We have that tier well ahead of the Jordan Love, Caleb Williams tier. But yeah, I mean, Kyler outscoring all those guys would not shock me whatsoever. Let's go to New England. So Jalen Polk, the second round rookie, opened camp with the starters at Patriots camp. And, I wouldn't consider that a big story, but I do think it's notable when a rookie, especially a round two rookie, immediately works with the starters. The team didn't make him, quote unquote, earn it. Now, he's not beating out a lot. Kendrick Bourne's coming off of the ACL. Pop Douglas is a role player. KJ Osborne and Juju Smith-Schuster are pretty dusty. We're at 159 overall right now on Jalen Polk. I could see us moving up a little bit if we get some more optimism around this offense, but that's kind of where we're at right now. Evan, what do you think about Polk and the Patriots pass game?
The Patriots pass game could be really, really bad this year. I mean, I think that they're going to play a lot of Jacoby Brissett. Drake May is, fairly raw. I think the offense is just not set up for success. In the coaching changes, we talk about Alex Van Pelt. He doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence as a play caller. I think that Jalen Polk does have a chance to be the Patriots' number one receiver, though Kendrick Bourne was already a 4.8 guy, and now he's coming off a major knee injury. Pop Douglas is like a little slot receiver, second year, sixth round pick, and they drafted Javon Baker in the fourth round. I mean, I think Jalen Polk's going to get a lot of opportunities. I just, I don't know how successful he's going to be with them.
Yeah.
But I do think that he has a case to be, a top 150 player for sure, because they're going to play him a lot.
Right. And I think the uncertainty is kind of a good thing, right? Like, we don't know. Jalen Polk could be awesome at football, like awesome. I don't think that's the case, but that's at least in the range of outcomes. It's not like Pop Douglas or Juju, who we kind of know what they are at this point. And so to get a guy who could lead their team in targets like Jalen Polk around pick 150, that's pretty appealing to me. So yeah, I'm still in on Jalen Polk. Last thing to get to here, story number 11, is the Nick Chubb video. I gave my take on this on Market Monday. A lot of people disagreed with me, Evan, so I want to give you the floor. Nick Chubb, of course, coming off of the severe knee injury, ACL, same knee that he blew out while he was at Georgia, posted a video a couple weeks ago of him squatting what looked like 585 pounds. That sent his ADP to the moon, up 10 spots immediately after that video. So I gave my take on Market Monday, but Evan, I'm sure the people want to hear your take if you would move Nick Chubb in the rankings based on that video.
Absolutely not. I mean, the issue here is not the issue here is making cuts on the surgically reconstructed knee, not doing squats. We want to see him making cuts, and I don't think we're going to see him play before midseason.
Mm-hmm. Yep, agreed. And when he comes back, we also don't know if he'll have the same role that he once had. I mean, we have no idea what that's going to look like. Also, similar.
Yeah, I mean, they're changing the offense in Cleveland this year to more of a spread. And is Nick Chubb really a spread back? I mean, it's just he's a stay away.
Related to that is T.J. Hawkinson reported to camp and was seen doing sprints on the sideline. T.J. Hawkinson, another guy we're not expecting to be back until very late in the season. For home leagues, if you have IR spots, things like Hawkinson and Chubb make a lot more sense. If you don't have IR spots, if you have thin benches, if you're in best ball, it's much harder for me. But yeah, Evan, I don't think you had Hawkinson in the top 150 if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, any thoughts on Hawkinson?
If he would be, he'd be he'd be pretty late in the top 150.
Yep. Okay. We're going to keep going through news and stuff. I think it's important to be really on top of that with shows on news and ranking changes at least every other week, if not more. Before we get out of here today, though, wanted to give Evan a chance to talk about some things that he learned while doing his team previews for this year. Again, if you have DraftKit Pro, you can find all the team previews on the site right now. First thing Evan wanted to talk about is the Buffalo Bills. After doing the preview, Evan said Bills are better than commonly perceived. I have bets personally on Jets to win AFC East, and I actually have a side bet with Leone head to head with these two also. So I'm a little worried what Evan's going to say here, but go ahead, Evan, on Bills after the preview.
Well, I listen to a lot of podcasts and I listen to, other analysts, and, there seems to be a consensus that the Bills are in somewhat of like a rebuild. When I did the team preview, I kind of like really disagreed with that. And I think that they have a much better roster than is sort of perceived. Like, I think people talk about, losing Stephon Diggs, who was not an impact player in the second half of last season. They're getting back Matt Milano and Von Miller on defense. They're getting back a lot of dudes that they lost in the secondary. They have a lot of young, promising players in the secondary. When Sean McDermott really took the reins of their defense, remember they lost all those dudes early on, and then Sean McDermott took over the reins of their defense. They played really good defense in the second half of the season. Joe Brady emphasized more of a rushing attack, and we talk about that. The running game isn't that important sometimes. I think that it can be very important for a team that is quarterbacked by a player like Josh Allen, who can be a little bit volatile. It kind of keeps the offense on schedule, and they were very successful. They finished red hot, emphasizing the running game. In the pass catcher core, no Stephon Diggs. That may be a positive. I think that Curtis Samuel is a guy who can definitely make plays, has the familiarity with Joe Brady from Carolina. I think Khalil Shakir might be really underrated. And I think that Keon Coleman, as the season progresses, I think that he's in a situation similar to, the Bills front office comes from Carolina, where they had Cam Newton. They compared Josh Allen internally to Cam Newton. Kelvin Benjamin had a really big rookie season with Cam Newton. I think, and Keon Coleman is a similar sort of player. So I think that this roster is a lot better than people are giving it credit for. And I think that they're like a sneaky Super Bowl pick, with the consensus sort of down on them. They're well coached. They've got a great front office. I think they had a really nice draft. They have a top 2 quarterback. I think this is a team to bet on when the consensus is down on them.
Yeah. I think like asking Josh Allen to do what he did down the stretch last year, which was literally run for like 2 touchdowns a game. He was like absolute Superman. You're just asking a lot for him to sustain that for the whole year. Maybe he can. But I think that's the kind of performance they're going to need out of him. And I obviously love
I don't,
Josh
because
Allen.
I think that they can be really good in the running game.
Yeah.
And that was an element that they had lacked for years. I think that they have a chance to have a really productive running game this season. And so Josh Allen doesn't need to be Superman for another year.
Yeah. I'm trying to pull up here the odds, current odds. So it's changed a lot. When I took the Jets, they were plus 190. Odds to win the AFC East now: Bills plus 165, Jets plus 170, Dolphins plus 220, Patriots 25-1. So relatively flat there between Bills, Jets, and Dolphins to win the AFC East. All right. Second thing Evan learned doing the Browns preview: Amari Cooper takes. Evan, go ahead with what you learned doing the Browns preview.
So Amari Cooper, I just think it was worth emphasizing how good of a player he still is. And the Browns acknowledged that when they just gave him a raise. He's 30 years old, but he is still playing at a really high level. He had career highs in receiving yards and yards per reception last season. That was despite missing the final 2 games with a heel injury and catching passes from 4 different quarterbacks over the course of the year. If you just isolate Deshaun Watson's passes, Amari Cooper led the team in targets, catches, yards, and first down conversions. The Browns are going to throw the ball more this year under Ken Dorsey. And so Amari Cooper, and pretty pretty consistently year over year, I've been ahead of ADP on Amari Cooper. I'm going to be ahead of ADP on Amari Cooper again this season, still playing at a really, really high level.
Yeah. I'm a little worried that we're too light on Amari Cooper because we currently have him like very close, but just behind Michael Pittman, Christian Kirk, Zay Flowers. And we have Amari right just ahead of George Pickens and Keenan Allen. So I like a lot of receivers in that range. It's just I've been taking Pittman and Kirk and Tank Dell before Amari Cooper, and that's left me with very little Amari Cooper, which is an uncomfortable position to have, I think, because I agree with Evan. He can have huge spike weeks too. I mean, monster games for Amari Cooper, and that's obviously what we want in all forms of fantasy. Number 3 thing Evan learned while doing the team previews. Let's go down to Houston and Nico Collins. Evan, what do you have for the people on Texans?
Yeah, just wanted to highlight how awesome of a season that Nico Collins had last season. And this is another guy who was rewarded for it. He got a 3-year, $73 million extension. You know, he from an athletics and size standpoint is a true alpha, and he's playing that X position in the Bobby Slowick offense. You know, you think about, and Bobby Slowick is like a Kyle Shanahan guy. You think back to Julio Jones. You think back to Andre Johnson. That's the position that Nico Collins is playing. He's only 25 years old. He was second in the NFL in yards per route run this past season, dominated versus man coverage, as has been highlighted by Matt Harmon, and also became an absolute stud as a run after catch receiver. I remember last year, Bobby Slowick actually expressed some concerns about Nico Collins as a run after catch player. On these deep crossing patterns, he absolutely killed this past season as a run after catch wideout. He's another guy I'm going to be higher on than ADP because I think that he could, emerge as like a top 5 type of receiver, catching passes from CJ Stroud, who I think is going to have another, he should take a step. This is usually the biggest development year is typically the second year in a quarterback's development.
So I'm with you. I love Nico Collins. The pushback that you're going to get from being high on Nico Collins, people are going to say last year Tank Dell was hurt when Nico went off. Last year they didn't have Steph Diggs. You add those 2 guys in and you start to get the targets squeezed. Now, the reason that I don't think that's that big a deal is because they were middle of the pack in throw rate and they were at the bottom of the pack in first down throw rate. There is more meat on the bone for them to have a bigger pie for the past game. So that was what I would say about that. But I kind of like all 3, Nico and Tank Dell. But yeah, Evan, what do you say to the people about the volume concerns on Nico?
I understand that from a projection standpoint. We kind of went through that with DJ Moore a little bit last year. That he was hard to project him on paper to have a big season, and he still came through on efficiency. Yeah. I think Nico Collins is going to be extremely efficient. You think about their offensive line, which they lost almost all. I think all 5 guys were injured at some point last year. Those guys are like all coming back. I think they're going to be really, really efficient on offense, and I could not agree more that they have meat left on the bone, especially in terms of that first down run rate. It was way too high last season. I think the Texans know that, and that's something that Bobby Slowick can fix.
Right. And when you have Stroud, Diggs, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, you should be throwing on first down.
Yeah, you're incentivized to throw the ball more.
100%. I think I put out an article today. You guys can find it on the site. 8 things I think about the NFL season. One of them was CJ Stroud lead the NFL in passing yards this season. All right. Oh, we already talked about J.K. Dobbins thing. We'll skip that one. Let's go to Las Vegas, Zamir White stuff. So the Zamir White stuff is hard, right? The way you would think about Zamir White is a classic dead zone back. Not great in the pass game, maybe not the most talented guy, but we're betting just on straight volume. The difference this time is there basically is no more dead zone. Zamir White goes in like round 8 or round 9. The dead zone previously was 3, 4, 5, 6, where you were taking these guys who weren't that good at football, could easily be replaced just because they were projected to get a bunch of early season volume. So I think we need to shift the conversation there a little bit. We're going to have another podcast all about running back dead zone coming up here soon. But Evan, go ahead for the people what you learned about Raiders from the team preview.
Yeah, and my sense is that Zamir White is going to be a kind of polarizing guy in fantasy circles because of what you just mentioned, because his outlook is so heavily dependent upon rushing volume and just usage. But I mean, that's what he got in the final 4 games of last season when Antonio Pierce essentially hitched his entire offensive wagon to Zamir White. His touch counts over the last 4 games: 20, 22, 25, and 26. Snap percentage of 70%, 76%, 57%, and 73% in weeks 15 through 18. The only offseason backfield addition that the Raiders made was Alexander Mattison, who was awful last season. And Zamir White is a big time athlete, 6', 214, a speed score freak with a 4.4 flat 40. So the athleticism is on his side. And, I think that Antonio Pierce obviously really believes in him. And it's not like they have a quarterback that they can lean on to carry, any kind of a big time passing game. It's very, very volume dependent. And I think that is going to drive down his price in some drafts. I do think that in the home leagues, though, he could be a guy that people target a little bit above ADP.
Yeah, for sure. And they also added Dylan Laub, I hope I'm saying that right, competing with Amir Abdullah for pass down work. So, like, in games they get behind, and people think the Raiders are going to be absolutely atrocious. I actually think that the defense is going to be good enough to keep them in a lot of games. But in games they get behind, Zamir White's going to be a tough click in DFS. And, you're not going to want to play him in season long probably either. But in games where they can score touchdowns, control the game, Zamir White, I think, is going to look pretty decent. All right. That is going to do it for this look at the latest news and Silva's team previews. Remember, a lot of stuff we're talking about here, more in depth. All the rankings are continuously updated as part of Draft Kit Pro. If you're in the best ball streets, Best Ball Sub is still continuously updating as well. Crazy action in best ball right now. Like, I can feel more casuals coming in and playing. We had Dave Portnoy play a 10K. We had Barstool Big Cat play a 10K. We've got all kinds of people doing crazy things right now. So best ball streets are certainly alive and well. Check out the Best Ball Sub for more on that. For Evan, for producer Luke, for producer Ryan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.